All right, so buckle up, everybody, because today's deep dive is taking us right into the heart of free-to-play video games, a world that honestly brings up a lot of strong opinions.
Yeah.
We've got this article here, very straightforward title, Top 10 Biggest Problems with Free Video Games. And it doesn't hold back, really lays out some of the issues, but we're going deeper than just the problems, right? We want to see what makes these games tick, good and bad. So by the end of this, you'll be able to spot those sneaky traps, but also appreciate the real gems out there.
Yeah, it's really kind of fascinating how this whole idea of free has just shaken up the gaming scene, you know? Like it's opened the doors for so many people to try out gaming who might never have before.
Oh, absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, that word free, it's practically magic, right?
Yeah,
Especially when you're talking about games. But, and this is what got me thinking, the article mentions how big this model has become for multiplayer games. So what's the story there?
Well, I mean, it kind of makes sense when you look at the big names. Think about Fortnite, Fall Guys, Roblox. They've all blown up using this model. And it all comes down to community, that shared experience. Free means it's easy to grab your friends, jump in, and just have fun together.
Right. The community aspect is huge. I get that. But let's be honest, nothing's really free, is it? Someone's always got to foot the bill, so to speak. And that kind of brings us to the big question, the elephant in the room, microtransactions. The article goes pretty deep on how these can be a real problem.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You've got everything from those cosmetic items in Fortnite, making your character look cool. But then you get into those more controversial mechanics like pay-to-win stuff in games like Roblox.
You know, I got to admit, I've seen some of those cosmetic items, and some of them are pretty tempting. Is that part of the problem, though? Are they designed to be tempting?
Well, there's definitely a psychological element there. These games, they use all sorts of clever design tricks like limited time offers, loot boxes, all that stuff. It creates this sense of urgency, scarcity, like you're going to miss out if you don't act now. And that can push people to spend more than they planned.
I totally get that. It's like those flash sales online. You feel like you got to grab something before it's gone, even if you don't really need it.
Exactly. And then you have the whole pay to win thing where players can basically buy advantages in the game. It gives them an edge over those who aren't spending money, and that can create a really uneven playing field. Super frustrating if you're trying to rely on skill and strategy.
So it becomes less about how good you are and more about how deep your pockets are.
Yeah, pretty much. It really undermines the whole idea of fairness and competition. Some games trying to balance it out, offering only cosmetic microtransactions so the gameplay stays fair. But there's always that risk, right? Developers could tip the scales too far in favor of those paying players.
Okay, so we've got the microtransactions, the pay-to-win stuff, but the article doesn't stop there. It goes on to talk about a whole bunch of other issues, misleading ads, tons of interruptions, even those cash grab games.
Oh, yeah, those are all really important points to consider. Maybe we should start with those misleading ads. I think a lot of people have run into that, especially with mobile games.
Oh, tell me about it. I can't even count how many times I've been fooled by an ad showing gameplay that's totally different from the actual game. It's like they show you this gourmet meal in the commercial, but then they serve you fast food when you actually order it.
That's a perfect analogy. The article actually mentions Gardenscapes as a good example. You see this puzzle game in the ads, but really, it's mostly about decorating a garden and running into paywalls constantly.
It's like a total bait and switch, isn't it? Luring you in with something that looks fun and then hitting you with a completely different experience.
Exactly, and it raises some questions about the ethics of it all. Are these developers putting profits ahead of being transparent with players and making sure they're satisfied? And it's not just about the ads being misleading, it's also the sheer number of them.
Don't even get me started. Some of these games, it feels like you can't go 2 seconds without being bombarded by ads. It totally kills the flow. Is there like a reason for this constant barrage of ads?
Well, remember, these games are free, so they gotta make money somehow. Ads, they're one of the main ways a lot of these games make money. But it's a tough balance. Too many ads, and you'll drive players away, create a negative experience. Which kind of brings us to the whole cash grab game thing.
All right, break it down for me. What exactly makes a game a cash grab?
Think of it this way. These games are all about making a quick buck, often at the expense of quality and player experience. They're usually cheaply made, loaded with ads, and designed to kind of exploit those addictive tendencies.
So like the junk food of the gaming world. You might enjoy it for a minute, but you'll probably regret it later.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And sadly, a lot of these games are aimed at younger audiences who might not be as aware of those tactics.
That's a little worrying, especially since they're still learning about, spending responsibly and thinking critically. But before we get too deep into that, the article also talks about rip-off games. What's the story with those?
So, rip-off games are essentially clones of popular titles, trying to ride the coattails of games like Minecraft or Roblox. They might look kind of similar at first glance, but they don't have the same depth, originality, or polish as the real deal.
Ah, so like those knockoff designer handbags you see on the street? They might resemble the original, but the quality just isn't there.
Exactly. And they can be misleading, especially for younger players who might not know the difference. And this leads to another point the article makes. Some games use psychological tricks to keep you playing.
Okay, that sounds a little creepy. What kind of tactics are we talking about here?
Well, think about those games that try to make you feel guilty for not playing, you know? Messages like, your friends are waiting, or don't let your progress go to waste. They're tapping into that fear of missing out or your sense of obligation to keep you hooked.
It's like that friend who won't stop texting you to hang out, even when you just want to chill at home.
Right. And it can be hard to recognize these tactics for what they are, especially for younger players. It blurs the line between genuine fun and manipulation.
This is getting pretty heavy. It makes you wonder if there are any actual dangers lurking in these free-to-play games.
Well, there's one more thing the article mentions that we should talk about: viruses. It might not be as common as some people think, but it's a real concern.
Okay, now we're talking. Tell me everything.
So, free games, especially those downloaded from, let's say, less trustworthy sources, can sometimes have malware hidden in them. It's like a digital Trojan horse. You think you're getting a fun game, but it's actually sneaking something nasty onto your computer.
Yikes. So we've got misleading ads, annoying interruptions, manipulative tactics, and even the risk of viruses. Sounds like there's a lot to watch out for in this free-to-play world. Is there any hope for finding decent games without falling into all these traps?
Oh, there definitely is, but it takes a little bit of awareness, some research, and a healthy dose of skepticism.
All right, listeners, take notes. We're about to get into the good stuff, how to navigate this free-to-play jungle, find those hidden gems, and avoid the pitfalls. But first, we need to take a quick break. We'll be back in a flash with more insights from our expert. Don't go anywhere.
We'll be right back.
All right, so we're back and ready to map out some strategies for navigating this whole free-to-play world. I gotta admit, after everything we just talked about, I'm feeling a little, I don't know, overwhelmed. But also curious about, the good stuff. So where do we even begin? What's like the first rule of thumb when you're checking out these games?
I think the most important thing is just being aware of the business model, you know? Gotta remember, these games aren't actually free. Developers, they need to make money somehow. And that usually means those microtransactions, those ads we were talking about. So before you even download a game, just take a second, think about how they're making money.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like checking the menu prices before you sit down at a restaurant.
Right.
You don't want to get hit with some crazy bill at the end. So how can we get a better idea of a game's business model before we actually start playing?
Reading reviews is always a good starting point. Look for red flags, like people complaining about aggressive monetization, pay-to-win mechanics, or a ton of ads. Player reviews can be super helpful, give you a real sense of the overall experience.
It's like reading those online reviews before you book a hotel. You want to know if the place is a total dump, right? If there are roaches or the AC is broken. Same idea with games. A little research can save you a lot of headaches later on. Any other tips for finding those hidden gems out there?
Oh, definitely. Especially if you find yourself, tempted by those in-game purchases, it's crucial to set spending limits for yourself. It's like budgeting for groceries. You go in with a plan and you avoid those impulse buys that can really mess up your finances.
Oh, that's smart. I'm definitely guilty of those impulse buys sometimes. You get caught up in the moment, click that buy button without thinking,
Yeah.
especially when you're having fun. You just want to keep going. But setting a limit beforehand, that can help you stay grounded, avoid overspending.
Exactly. And here's something to consider. Support developers who offer fair, enjoyable experiences, even if it means spending a little money up front. There are so many amazing indie games out there that offer tons of entertainment without resorting to those, predatory monetization tactics we've been talking about.
I love that idea. It's like choosing to shop at your local bookstore instead of just ordering everything from some giant online retailer. You're consciously choosing to support quality, ethical practices.
Right. It's about voting with your wallet, investing in the kind of gaming ecosystem you want to see. And, stepping back for a second, we got to acknowledge that this whole free-to-play thing, it's had a huge impact on the gaming world. It's made gaming accessible to a lot more people, which is great. But like anything that shakes things up, it's come with some challenges.
It's almost like the invention of the printing press, right? It made knowledge and information available to everyone, but it also opened the door for misinformation propaganda. It's a powerful tool, but it needs to be used responsibly.
That's such a good analogy, and it really highlights the need for critical thinking, awareness as we navigate this new landscape of free-to-play games. So where do we go from here? If this is the future of gaming, how do we make sure it's a future we want to be a part of? How do we balance accessibility with ethical practices and, genuine enjoyment?
It feels like we're at this crossroads. One path leads to a world where gaming is all about profit, exploitation, endless microtransactions. And the other path, well, leads to a world where creativity, innovation, fair play, those things still matter. It's a big moment for the gaming industry. Feels like the choices we make now will have a ripple effect for years to come.
And those choices aren't just up to the developers, players have a role to play too. By being informed, discerning, and speaking up about the kind of gaming experiences we want, we can shape the future of the industry.
That's a good reminder. It's easy to feel like we're just passive consumers, but we have more influence than we think. The choices we make, the games we play, how we engage with them, how we spend our money, it all sends a message.
Absolutely. And by having these conversations, by shedding light on the complexities of this free-to-play model, we can help create a more balanced, sustainable gaming ecosystem.
This has been, honestly, a really eye-opening conversation. It's clear that the world of free-to-play games is way more nuanced than it seems at first glance. But before we wrap up, I want to hear from you, our listeners. What are your thoughts on all of this? Have you run into any of these issues yourselves in your own free-to-play experiences? We'd love to hear your perspectives. Keep the conversation going.
Because ultimately, the future of gaming is a shared responsibility. By working together, by being mindful players, informed consumers, we can create a gaming world that's both enjoyable and ethical.
All right, folks, that concludes our deep dive into the world of free-to-play games. We've explored the good, the bad, the challenges, the opportunities, and hopefully we've given you some things to think about.
Remember, the power is in your hands. Play smart, be discerning, and let's work together to create a gaming world we can all be proud of.
Until next time, happy gaming, everyone. It's wild, isn't it? Like, we started with this idea of free games, and it's turned into this whole, rabbit hole of complexity. Business model, psychology, it's a lot more than meets the eye.
Oh, for sure. But I think it's important to remember, free-to-play isn't inherently bad. There are plenty of developers out there making really fun games without resorting to those, kind of shady tactics we talked about.
Yeah. It's not about, writing off the whole model. It's more about, like, us as players being more aware, more discerning, right? We got to be able to spot those traps, understand why games are designed certain ways, and ultimately, make smart choices about how we spend our time and money.
Absolutely. And I think that's a big takeaway from all this, right? Knowledge is power. The more we understand about how these games work, the better we can navigate the whole thing and find those games that are actually worth our time.
So it's not just about playing. It's about being, conscious players,
Yeah.
informed players, right?
Yeah.
Recognizing that the choices we make, they actually have an impact on the industry.
Exactly. If we want to see a future where gaming is about creativity, fairness, actual enjoyment, we got to support those values with our actions. And that could be as simple as choosing games that respect our time, our intelligence, or, even just being willing to spend a few bucks to support developers who are doing things right.
It's like voting with your wallet, right? Showing the industry what kind of games we actually want.
Yeah.
And speaking of, values and stuff, this whole conversation has really made me think about the ethics of free-to-play games.
Yeah.
It's like a reminder that even in the digital world, our choices have real consequences.
Oh, yeah, totally. And it's a conversation we ought to keep having as the gaming world keeps changing. We got to hold developers accountable for sure, but we also got to recognize that we have power as players.
I think that's a great point to wrap things up on, actually. This isn't just about individual games. It's about the kind of gaming culture we want to build, a culture where both players and developers, they care about fairness, creativity, and genuine fun.
And a culture where we see gaming as more than just entertainment, right? It's a powerful medium. It can connect us, inspire us, even challenge us.
Well said. All right, folks, that's our deep dive into the world of free-to-play games. We've seen the good, the bad, the ups, the downs, and hopefully given you all something to think about.
Remember, the future of gaming is in our hands. Let's play smart, be discerning, and work together to make gaming something we can all be proud of.
Until next time, happy gaming, everyone.